Alright, May 29th, 2020. The gardens are pretty much almost finished for the spring planting season and building of new garden beds. Starting at the back door of the house, we've got some stands with a bunch of potted house plants that were brought outside for the summer. Behind the fern is a lemon tree in a pot. And we've got some hosta, a white rose, a blue rose of Sharon, some Egyptian onions, and some barrels with hot chili peppers in them. Around over by the driveway, we've got some containers, pile of wood chips, some building supplies, and hosta plants here. A couple of blueberry bushes and some raspberries with them. Purple coneflower. And some barrels with more Egyptian onion, some garlic, peony, and some yellow coreopsis. Small pot with more Egyptian onions. We've got lots of them. And then in the garden area, I'll come around to the front to name the plants. Purple coneflower here, parsley in the containers, one row of potatoes, Napa cabbage, kale, Napa cabbage, kale, a few marigolds in front with some kohlrabi behind it, and I think the first two here are kale again. Here we have 4 long rows of painted mountain Indian corn, very colorful corn that I use for cornmeal. I let it go to the full season and dry out. Behind them a row of sunflowers by the fence. In the pathway some daisies have grown in the grass, so I just let them grow. I don't mow them down. And here's a white rose of Sharon next to those blueberries. Some more raspberry bushes. Here's a mayflower, which is a nice wild plant. I think that still has some flowers on it. Each plant that comes up from a rhizome gets its own single flower, and they're just about faded. Here's one of the flowers. 1 white flower per plant, and each flower produces a small fruit in the center there, which looks like a little crab apple when it develops, and they are edible. The wildlife like them, and you can make a jam from the wildflowers. More red raspberries back here. And behind the corn rows at the garage, I moved the fence. Last year the fence just came to the corner of the garage, and the area behind it was kind of inaccessible, so I moved it to make a pathway to more parts of the garden. So we can do a continuous garden tour without turning around. So over here behind the garage we have a little granite stone bench and some wild plants near the pond. But this here is the koi pond that I built. Holds about 2,400 gallons. It's about 14 feet across and about 4 feet deep. And behind it there's a little man-made stream that I made with a little bit of a trickling waterfall. Very small, but there it is. The water drops just a few inches. But it provides a place that the pigeons and the wild songbirds really love for a bird bath. They just go in that stream all day long. I'll see birds flying in and out of here. And I pump the water up to a higher small plastic pool in it, and it runs down the stream. And then there's just a water tank behind there for extra fish. Inside the pond I've got some goldfish. Let's see if we can see them. I had koi in the past, but they didn't survive one of the rough winters, and I was getting frustrated, so I started shaking some goldfish food out of the jar. So if we come over here for a better angle, because of the reflective light, you can barely see them there, but let me throw some food in, they'll come up. There you are. So these are large, fancy goldfish. They're probably like 6 inches long each. And the blackfish you see swimming around, those are just golden shiners. I threw some of them in there because I had some extras. So it's a nice place to sit during the day and enjoy the pond. Keep some fish food here available. So there's a little trellis tower here for a clematis plant that's climbing it. It's doing okay. I transplanted them from a different part of the yard because I preferred this location for them. By one of the gates back to the main yard. And this flower bed's a little overgrown. It has, these are purple alliums, really nice puffball flowers in the spring. They're just about finished for the season. And there's a bumblebee flying onto the phlox. We get lots of them around. So this phlox growing in here, and bee balm. This is purple coneflower. We've got some Dutch iris and some bleeding heart, which is still flowering. Here's some bleeding heart flowers right here. Where are they? Right there. And this tree is Kusa dogwood. And over behind the garden, this is some kind of tropical flowering plant. I don't remember what it's called. Some more Dutch iris. A very lifelike blue heron decoy, pretending to fish in the pool. And behind here there's the rock garden with some jackanapulpits and sedums. And there's some bloodroot in a pot here. There's some of them around different parts of the yard. Here's our jackanapulpits. You can see the flower here. They're all around the area. Here the trillium is faded from, it starts off as a white flower and then turns pink. Let's see if I can zoom in on the flower itself. Focus isn't very good in this camera. There it is. And this bloodroot leaf there. And this part of the rock garden kind of got overgrown. We need to dig that all out. Some daylilies over here on the side of it. Over here, let me zoom back out. There we go. This bed is various types of sedum, a rhubarb in the front, some chives, garlic chives and regular chives here. And behind it is a complex, really large compost pile. So there's a fresh compost in that section. In this section I piled up the compost behind the cinder blocks. And then this I threw a board on it, so there's some potting supplies there. And we've been digging in this area, so this bed here isn't quite finished. It's one of the last parts to work on. There's some chives in the front. This water tower is part of my new water features, rice paddy and goldfish pool combined. So I pump water from the lowest point up to this tank. It pours into this chamber here. There's a pot with cattails. Then there's a goldfish pool. So that's about 2 feet deep, lined with plastic. Step into the area. So in here there's a lily pad and some goldfish. You can see them hiding. So it overflows, comes out of this pool. This is about 2 feet by 4 feet in size, 4.5 feet across. Water flows down the channel into another pool, pours in here. And this pool is going to be the rice paddy, so this container is full of rice seedlings. And this section here is about 8 inches deep of mud with about an inch of water. And I will fill this up with the seedlings and spread them all out. This is 3 feet by 8 feet. And the secret of this section is over here. If you step down to a lower area, that's a sheet of styrofoam covering up an opening to an underground root storage. So there's a 3 foot by 8 foot section there. I can slide Tupperware containers in with carrots and beets and turnips in the fall. See how long I can store them in the winter. This is all a concept I had to see if I can combine a storage area with a raised bed. And not just any raised bed, but a rice paddy raised bed. And I planted marigolds along the perimeter. Next to them, this trench is going to be filled with rock, so it'll be a path raised up higher. I'll fill it with rock up to the edge of the wood. And then I'll raise and fill this marigold bed higher so the plastic will be covered. Because we've got cinder blocks, there's 2 layers of cinder blocks below, wrapped in plastic. And then the rice paddy raised bed is lined with plastic. That keeps all the water in. The water flows out the back of the rice paddy into a smaller pool, which was my original rice paddy that I experimented with for the last 3 years to see if I could actually grow rice. So I purchased rice seed from a farm in Vermont that experimented with Japanese rice to see which varieties grow well in New England. So I purchased 1 gram of seeds from them for $5, and that was about 30 seeds. And so I propagated the seeds for a few years by growing them here for the full season. And I threw some cattails in here. I'll probably put more rice in here this year as well. And the final stage is the lowest sump pool, a 40-gallon tank set into the ground. And I got a few goldfish in that one as well. So that's the rice paddy area. And this little triangle section of soil I haven't finished. I'm going to dig that up and plant any remaining flower seedlings I have. Like, for instance, this tray full of marigold seedlings. Can all be spread out in here, plus other things I have. They might not all fit. So then I used to have a large greenhouse here. It was about 9 by 16, but I built it by hand out of scrap materials a few years ago. And used it for 5 years and then dismantled it because it was getting kind of degraded with the weather. So I split this section. I've got some long rows on the one side, and in the front is purple top turnip. Behind that, along the trellis, is going to be green beans and cucumbers. So we can get a closer look at those. So the turnip seedlings are just coming up. And we've got little cucumber seedlings, and there's one of the beans just coming up. So not all the beans came up, they're old seeds. I might reseed them again, but some are coming up. There's another one there. They'll spread and fill. I put a second planting in last week, so they should be coming up soon also. So that's a whole line of trellises and some portions of the greenhouse behind it I dismantled. And then this rock pile here came from digging out these raised beds and of course the sunken area for the rice paddy. These containers, I've got some dill plants in, and then some strawberries in the smaller pots. That's bee balm in this pot. And behind the wire out in the yard is more yellow coreopsis. Some kind of flowers, maybe poppies in that blue container. Some yellow trumpet lilies. Some sedum in small pots on a painted chair, and some daylilies behind there. So this section, I've got some rows that I dug. So this first row is split between alternating basil and Detroit red beets. Then I've got 2 rows of plum tomatoes just coming up. So we've got beets, tomatoes, These rows are about 10 feet long. More red beets here in that row. Another row of Napa cabbage. So with the other 2 rows in the other garden, I've got about 35 head of Napa cabbage. I'll use that for making kimchi, which I really enjoy. And then here, this row is kohlrabi, about a dozen plants. And these 2 rows, with the grass in between them, are carrots that I just put the seed in a few days ago, so they haven't germinated yet. So that's that raised bed. I'll come back out. So that's all the garden area behind the fences. With the koi pond and things. So I come out into the yard. There's a little bit here, but I've got a lot. Dropped the phone, sorry. There's a bed here that has a lot of nice phlox in it right now, but it's been mostly taken over with weed growth, so I'll be digging this out later to replant it. Some ornaments in here. I saved these beard tongue plants from amongst the weeds, so when I dig the weeds up I'll still have those. So I'll do that when I find there's some Dutch iris in here and another allium, so I'll save the plants that we want, some bee balm, and discard the weeds so I can replant the bed. And there's some different types of sedum here, and it's a stone crop. I don't know what these all are, but they're really nice variety of different colored sedum plants in this display that Tammy made. And I've got some large pots with zinnias, bee balm, stone crop sedum, more zinnias. Then there's a raised bed here with 3 rows of radish. The first 2 small rows are red radish, and the 3rd row is daikon radish, which is one of the ingredients for the kimchi that I'll make with the cabbage. Behind that is a wire and string trellis for peas. And this row is about 15 feet long. The front I used old fence posts for the border. And we got a bed for garlic here. This is about 12 feet long or so. There's some potted plants in front. Salvia, bee balm, Dutch iris, or Siberian iris maybe. There's a yellow yarrow. The flower's past. It's a really bright yellow, but it only flowers for a week or 2 in the spring. And some more various plants. This has a lighter blue flower than the salvia, but it's a similar type of flower spike. Some purple ivy, some asters, and 1 lonely hot pepper left over from the plantings. Little ring here with spring bulbs in it, so they're mostly past, except there's a little bit from the allium left over. But there's crocus and daffodil and tulip and alliums here, and a barrel with some flowering plants in there, so we'll see what comes up. I think the larger ones are poppies. So we get, within here there's 4 rows of garlic, so maybe 100 bulbs. And some peonies in the end section here. So that's that. Here's that first garden bed we looked at over here. These barrels are empty still, so when I process the compost I'll be able to produce some more soil to fill them. But 5 large barrels should give me plenty more place to plant things. Maybe I can go to the store and get some other seedlings for variety. Then we have the barbecue fire pit. So there's a steel ring in here, and I made a chamber in here for roasting Dutch oven stews or beans underneath it. So it's a bean pit, fire pit. So I dug down, it's all brick lined, so it'll all collapse into the ground. Build the fire on top of your Dutch oven, with a metal plate in there to separate them, and slow roast your beans or stew. So at the end of the day you'll have a meal after a little backyard fire. In the eating area, Little round barbecue grill under the cover. And outside there's one last area. These are the pots I showed from before, the coreopsis and trumpet lilies, sedum plant, daylilies. There's a large peony ready to bloom here soon through the summer, a red rose, some more hostas, and some mint in this bed. So that's about it. The late spring flowers, and we'll see more. Maybe I'll do another video when the gardens are bigger and see if I can keep up with weeding them.